"Don't go under that bridge," she screamed, her bare feet bleeding on the asphalt. 17 motorcycles locked in a wall of steel and growling engines. "They'll kill every one of you." Ryder Callahan had stopped his Harley with 3 feet to spare. The girl was wrapped in garbage bags, soaking wet, standing in the middle of Highway 9 in a rainstorm at 2 in the morning, and she was not afraid of them. She was afraid for them. That was the moment everything changed. If this story hits something real in you, subscribe to our channel and follow every part until the end. Drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. The rain had been falling for 3 hours before the girl appeared. Not drifting, not stumbling. Running flat out arms, pumping legs, churning through 6 inches of standing water on Highway 9 straight into the headlights of 17 Hell's Angels riding in formation at 60 miles an hour. Ryder Callahan saw her first because Ryder always saw everything first. That was how he had stayed alive for 22 years in a world where being second meant being buried. His hand hit the brake lever before his brain had fully processed what his eyes were delivering, and the Harley shuddered and fishtailed and came to a stop on wet asphalt with the front tire sitting 37 inches from the girl's body. She did not flinch. She stood in the rain with her arms spread wide and her eyes locked on his headlight, and she screamed again, her voice cutting clean through the engine noise and the thunder and the rain hammering the asphalt like gravel. "Don't go under that bridge. It's a kill box. Do you hear me? It is a kill box." Behind Ryder, 16 bikes were locking up brakes in sequence, the sound of it like a zipper being yanked open on the world. Tires screaming, metal groaning. Nobody went down, which was its own kind of miracle on a night like this, when the noise stopped and the rain filled the silence. Back in 17 men sat on 17 idling motorcycles staring at a girl who could not have been more than 15 years old, wrapped head to ankle in black garbage bags cinched with electrical tape. Her blonde hair plastered flat to her face, her bare feet bleeding from the road surface, her chest heaving with the effort, and she was still talking. 14 shooters, positioned east and west of the support columns. There's a command truck parked under the northwest arch. It's been there since Thursday. The man running the operation goes by Razor Vance. He has radios. He has night vision. He has been watching this road for 6 days, and he knew you were coming before you left. Ryder did not move. He sat on his bike with the rain hammering his shoulders, and he looked at the girl and he tried to find the lie in her. Because in 22 years of riding, he had learned that the most dangerous thing in any situation was not the man with the gun. It was the thing that looked harmless. A girl in the road at 2 in the morning in a rainstorm was the oldest ambush bait play in the criminal playbook. You stopped. You got out of formation. You clustered. Then the people who sent the girl did what they came to do. He had seen it work twice. He had never forgotten either time. He cut the engine. The silence that followed was immediate and heavy, broken only by rain and the low rumble of 16 other bikes behind him. "Axel," he said, not raising his voice. "Already on it." Axel Briggs, 6'3", 260 pounds, 12 years, as Ryder's road sergeant was off his bike and moving to the east shoulder, in the same motion eyes, scanning the darkness beneath the bridge structure 300 yards ahead. "I'm not seeing movement, but that doesn't mean anything in this weather. Ghost, take 3 men and push into the tree line on the west side. Do not go past the 50-yard mark. Look for vehicle heat. Look for body positions. Do not engage anything. Report back." Ghost Murdoch nodded once and was gone, pulling 3 riders with him, without a word spoken between any of them. That was the thing about men who had ridden together long enough. They developed a language that didn't need sound. Ryder looked back at the girl. She had not moved. She was still standing in the road with her arms out, still breathing hard, and now that his headlight was the only light and he could see her properly, he registered things he had not caught in the first seconds. The garbage bags were not makeshift rain gear thrown together tonight. They were worn, patched in 3 places with more electrical tape. The tape was dirty layered, some of it starting to peel, meaning she had been wearing this for weeks, not hours. Her feet were not just bleeding from the road. The cuts were old and new, both healed over and fresh, the kind of accumulation that came from weeks of living without shoes. Her face was gaunt in a way that went beyond cold or fear. She had not eaten properly in a long time. This girl had not been sent by anyone tonight. This girl had been out here for months. Come here, Ryder said. He kept his voice level, not soft. Level. He had learned a long time ago that soft scared certain kinds of people more than hard did it felt like a trick. Level was honest. Level said, I am not deciding what you are yet, but I am listening. She walked to him, no hesitation. That registered too. How long have you been under that bridge? Since the first week of March, she said. It's now July 9th. So 4 months and 1 week. You've been living under that bridge. In the support structure. There's a maintenance ledge on the east pier 8 feet up. Nobody looks up. Most people don't even look sideways. I found it the third day. I've been using it since. What's your name? Emily. Emily Carter. How old are you? Emily Carter, 15. Where are your parents? Something moved behind her eyes. Not grief exactly. Something older than grief. The thing grief becomes after it has had enough time to calcify. My father is dead, she said. My mother was gone before that. It's just me. Ryder let that sit for exactly 2 seconds. Then tell me about the bridge. Everything you told me in the road, tell me again, slower, and tell me how you know it. She did not take a breath to steady herself. She did not look away. She looked straight at him, and she began to talk, and what came out of her was not the fragmented emotional account of a frightened teenager. It was a structured, sequenced tactical briefing delivered in a flat and precise voice that made the hair on the back of Ryder's neck rise for reasons that had nothing to do with the cold. Thursday evening, approximately 7:45 p.m., a black Kenworth command truck entered from the service road on the northwest bank. No markings. Military-grade communications antenna on the roof. I've seen those before. My father had books about them. It parked under the northwest arch and did not move. 6 men exited. They were carrying long cases. They spent approximately 90 minutes establishing positions. I counted and logged each one. You logged them. I keep a journal. I have kept one since my father... She stopped. Restarted. I keep records of everything I observe. My father said that observation without documentation is just watching. You have to write it down or it doesn't exist. All right, keep going. By Friday morning, there were 14 men total under the structure. They rotate in shifts, 6 on 8 resting. The resting team uses the command truck as shelter. They have a generator. They have food. They plan to be here for an extended operation. By Saturday, I had identified the command hierarchy. One man gives all orders. He uses the call sign Razor. The others call him Vance when they're relaxed, which is not often. How did you hear them? The East Pier maintenance shaft connects to a drainage channel that runs parallel to the main support beam. Sound carries through it. I've been using it to listen since Thursday. I have approximate transcripts. Ryder stared at her. He had interrogated DEA informants with less discipline than this child. What were they saying? They know a motorcycle convoy is coming through tonight. They know the route. They know the timing. They have the number. 17, I heard that specifically. 17 bikes. She paused. They were not guessing. Someone told them. The weight of that landed on every man within earshot. Ryder heard the shift, the subtle change in breathing and posture that ran through his crew like a current through water. Someone had told them, which meant someone in their network, their route, their circle had handed that information to a man named Razor Vance, who had parked a command truck under a bridge and spent 6 days building a kill box around it. Axel, Ryder said quietly. I heard it, Axel said from the shoulder, and his voice had gone to a place that was very quiet and very dangerous. Ghost came back from the tree line. He materialized out of the darkness with 3 men behind him, all of them moving with the compressed, careful economy of people who have been moving quietly through unknown territory. Vehicle heat northwest under the arch. Large. Running. I counted 2 heat signatures outside. It could be more inside. West support column, 2 men elevated position, maybe 12 feet up on something structural. East side I couldn't fully recon without crossing open ground. He looked at Ryder. She's not wrong. The girl Emily watched Ghost deliver his report and said nothing. She had known what he was going to find. She had already found it weeks ago by herself at 15 years old from a drainage shaft 8 feet off the ground. You said you've been here 4 months, Ryder said. Before these people showed up Thursday, what were you doing out here? Why stay under the bridge that long? For the first time, Emily Carter hesitated. It was not the hesitation of someone building a lie. It was the hesitation of someone calculating how much of the truth they were ready to give and to whom and whether the person asking was someone who would protect what they were about to be handed. She looked at Ryder Callahan for a long moment in the rain, and the headlight glare, a soaking wet 15-year-old girl in garbage bags and electrical tape bleeding on the asphalt, and she made a decision. My father was an environmental engineer, she said. His name was Daniel Mercer. 11 months ago, he discovered something in the river beneath this bridge. Illegal toxic dumping, industrial chemical waste buried in the riverbed and leaching upstream. He spent 3 months documenting it. Soil samples, water samples, GPS coordinates of every dump site, engineering diagrams of the dispersal pattern. He built a complete evidence file. He was going to take it to the federal EPA office in the state capitol. She stopped. He never made it. The rain fell. Nobody spoke. They found him 7 miles from here on a county road in his car. The official finding was single vehicle accident. Fell asleep at the wheel. Ran off the road. Her voice did not change. That was what was unbearable about it. Her voice did not change. He didn't fall asleep. My father never fell asleep driving. He drank 4 cups of coffee every morning, and he drove with both hands, and he checked his mirrors every 8 seconds because he told me once that a car is a weapon and you don't carry a weapon carelessly. You think he was killed? I know he was killed. Still no shake in her voice. Because the night before he died, he called me and he said he thought he was being followed. He said if anything happened to him, his evidence was already secured and that I would know where to find it. We had a protocol. We had planned for the possibility that someone might want to stop him. A pause. I was 14 when we made that plan. He was thorough. Ryder said, "Where is the evidence now?" "Safe," Emily said. "I've been guarding it for 4 months. I sleep on top of it. I haven't left this bridge for more than 2 hours at a time since I got here because I didn't know who to trust and I couldn't risk moving it without being certain." Axel had come to stand at Ryder's shoulder. His voice was low when he spoke, pitched just for Ryder. "She's been sitting on a federal evidence cache for 4 months, alone, at 14, then 15 years old." "Yeah," Ryder said. "And a hit squad rolled in Thursday to take out a witness before the information moved." Which means, Ryder said, that whoever killed her father either knew the evidence existed and couldn't find it, or just found out and decided to stop the entire convoy carrying it out. "We aren't carrying anything," Axel said. "They don't know that." The silence stretched. Then Emily's voice, steady as a compass needle. "There's one more thing I haven't told you." Ryder looked at her. "Razor Vance isn't just here to stop a motorcycle convoy. I've been listening to them for 6 days. This operation has a secondary objective. There are 2 names on the target list." She met his eyes directly, unflinching. "One of them is mine." The temperature under that rainy sky dropped 10 degrees in the space of 1 heartbeat. "Someone told them where I was," Emily said. "Someone told them that Daniel Mercer's daughter was living under this bridge and that she had her father's evidence and that she needed to be removed before she could deliver it to anyone." She paused. "They've been trying to figure out where I sleep for 6 days. They haven't found me yet, but they were going to search the maintenance shaft tomorrow morning. I heard them planning it 2 hours ago." Ryder's hands were flat on his thighs. He was very still. When Ryder went very still, the men around him got very attentive because they had all seen what came after the stillness. "2 hours ago," he repeated. "Yes. So you had 2 hours to run. You could have gone the other direction, flagged down a car on the North Road, been miles from here." "Yes. But instead you came into the road and stopped 17 motorcycles." "Yes." "Why?" Emily Carter looked at him for a long moment. The rain fell between them. "Because they knew you were coming," she said. "All 17 of you. And I heard what they were planning to do when you rode under that bridge. I wasn't going to let that happen when I could stop it. My father died because he tried to stop something wrong from happening and nobody helped him." She paused. "I'm not my father. I had the chance to help." Nobody on Highway 9 said anything for 10 full seconds. Then Axel Briggs, 12-year road sergeant veteran of more bad nights than most people would believe, turned to Ryder Callahan and said very quietly, "What do you need from me?" And Ryder, who had not made a reckless decision in 22 years, who had built his reputation on patience and calculation and the willingness to walk away from a fight that wasn't worth the looked at the girl standing barefoot and bleeding in the rain, guarding a dead man's truth on a maintenance ledge, 8 feet above a river full of poison, and made a decision that was not reckless at all. Get her off the road, he said. Get her warm. Get her something to eat if anybody's carrying anything. And then I need everybody who has ever cleared a building or covered a flanking position to come stand next to me because we have 14 armed professionals under that bridge who think they are about to have a very easy night. Ghost was already moving. Axel was already talking into his radio in a frequency they use for tactical ops, low and clipped and direct. 3 men peeled off to form a perimeter around Emily without being told. The remaining 10 moved toward Ryder in a loose cluster, and the quality of their movement had shifted. Something had settled into them, a gravity and purpose that was different from the way men move when they're riding. Emily allowed herself to be guided to the roadside. She sat down on the embankment grass when someone's hand gently pressed her shoulder, and she pulled her knees to her chest, and she watched Ryder Callahan's back as he stood in the rain with his crew around him, and spoke in a voice she could not fully hear. For the first time in 4 months, Emily Carter was not alone. She did not cry. She was saving that for later, for when she could afford it. But something in her chest that had been locked down since the night of the phone call, since the 7 words her father said before hanging up, that she had been replaying every night in the dark of the maintenance shaft, 7 words she hadn't told anyone yet. 7 words she was still not sure she was ready to say out loud, that something shifted. Just a fraction, just enough to breathe. On the road, Ryder was laying out the approach. Ghost would take 5 men east. Axel would take 4 men west. Ryder would take the remaining 4 straight at the command truck from the south approach, where the embankment gave them cover for the first 120 yards. The objective was the same across all 3 units: neutralize, contain, capture. Nobody fires unless fired upon. They needed Razor Vance conscious and talking because a dead man could not testify to who had given him the order to come here. One more thing, Ryder said, and his voice was very quiet now. Somebody in our network handed these people our route and our count tonight. That means this conversation ends here. Nobody contacts anyone outside this group until we are through and on the other side. Not your old lady, not your chapter president, nobody. We handle this with what we have and we figure out the leak after. 16 heads nodded. The rain kept falling. Under the bridge, Razor Vance sat in his command truck with his coffee and his radio and his certainty, watching his countdown clock, waiting for the sound of 17 motorcycles rolling into range. He was not watching the south embankment. He was not watching the east tree line. He was not watching the west column, where his own 2 men had just gone very quiet in a way that should have concerned him deeply. He was watching the north road, which was exactly what Ryder Callahan needed him to be doing. Emily Carter sat on the wet grass with a protein bar someone had pressed into her hands. She didn't know who, didn't know when, only knew that she was eating it in slow mechanical bites because her body knew what to do, even when her mind was somewhere else entirely. She was thinking about the maintenance shaft, about the waterproof case she had built around her father's evidence files with 3 layers of plastic sheeting and a rubber cargo strap, about the soil sample jars she had wrapped individually in his flannel shirt because the shirt was the only thing of his she had brought with her, and she had needed to use it for something that would protect what he had died for. She was thinking about the 7 words. Emily, the files are already moving. Watch over. Then the call had cut. Then the news had come. Then she had packed a bag and walked to the bridge because she had known exactly what those 7 words meant and exactly where the files were and exactly what she was supposed to do. Watch over them. She had done that. For 4 months and 1 week, she had done exactly that. She looked up at the bridge structure, disappearing into the rain and darkness above her, at the place where she had slept and shivered and documented and waited, and she thought, I held it. Dad, I held it. The night pressed down around her. Somewhere under that bridge, 14 armed men were about to discover that the most dangerous thing in any situation is not the one you planned for. It is the one you never saw coming. Ghost's team hit the east flank first. There was no countdown, no signal fire, no dramatic announcement. One moment, the east support column had 2 armed men in elevated positions. The next moment, it didn't. Ghost moved the way he had always moved in situations like this, without ceremony, without hesitation, without the kind of noise that gives a man time to raise his weapon or call for help. His 3 riders flanked him in a loose spread, using the sound of the rain to cover the last 30 yards, and what happened in the following 45 seconds was fast and quiet and final. Ryder heard nothing. That was how he knew it had gone right. He was on the south approach with Axel and three others belly crawling the last 60 yards through wet grass toward the command truck's blind side when his earpiece clicked twice ghost signal. East clear. He clicked back once. Acknowledged. Then he looked at Axel, who was 6 inches to his left, and Axel nodded and they kept moving. The command truck was running. He could feel the vibration of its generator through the ground before he could see the truck itself. A warm mechanical pulse coming up through the earth, steady and indifferent like a heartbeat that didn't know it was about to stop. Inside that truck, Razor Vance was still watching the North Road. He had a monitor array. Ryder had suspected as much from Emily's description of the communications antenna, and he had built the approach accordingly, all movement from the south and east, nothing crossing the camera coverage zone on the north approach. If Vance was watching his monitors and watching the road, he was watching the wrong direction with professional confidence, which was the most dangerous kind of wrong. 12 yards, Axel breathed. I know. Rear door or side hatch. Rear. He'll be facing the monitors. Rear puts us behind him. And if there's someone else in there, then we deal with someone else in there. Axel said nothing more. He had ridden with Ryder long enough to know that when Ryder spoke in that particular quiet register, no inflection, no hedging, no excess words, the decision was made, and the conversation was over. They reached the truck. Ryder put his hand flat on the rear door and felt the warmth of the generator, heat radiating through the metal. He looked at Axel. Axel looked at him. Then Ryder's hand moved to the latch, and Axel's shoulder went to the door frame, and in one coordinated motion, they were inside. Razor Vance had time to turn halfway around in his chair before Axel's forearm came across his collarbone from behind and drove him back into the seat with enough force to knock the breath out of him completely. The radio handset dropped. The coffee mug went sideways. A second man, younger, closer to the door, who had been reviewing a paper map, came up fast with his hand going for his hip, and Ryder was already there. Already had the wrist, already had the angle, and 3 seconds later the younger man was face down on the truck floor with his arms secured and Ryder's knee in the center of his back. Quiet. The whole thing had taken less than 10 seconds. Vance got his breath back in a ragged gasp and immediately said, "You have no idea what you're walking into." "You'd be surprised," Ryder said. He straightened up from the floor and looked at Vance directly for the first time. Razor Vance was in his mid-40s, lean and hard, in the way of men who have spent years doing physical work that isn't exercise, it's survival. His face had the flat, controlled quality of someone who had trained himself not to show surprise. He was showing a little now. Not much. Just at the edges. 17 bikes, Vance said slowly. You were supposed to come from the north. We did a lot of things we weren't supposed to do tonight. Vance looked at him and something shifted in his calculation. Someone warned you. Ryder did not answer that. He pulled the communications panel on the monitor array and disabled it in 4 clean pulls: antenna connection generator, feedback up battery, terminal satellite uplink card. The monitors went dark one by one. Whatever Vance's operation had been feeding back to whoever was receiving it, that feed was now dead. Vance watched him do it with a professional's eye and said, "That won't change anything. The operation has contingency protocols. If I miss a check-in, then someone will come looking," Ryder said, "and they'll find an empty truck and 14 men with very bad headaches and a lot of questions to answer. That's fine. We'll be ready for the follow-up." He crouched down to Vance's eye level. "What I want to know right now is who gave you the route, who gave you the count, and who put a 15-year-old girl's name on a target list." Vance said nothing. "That's all right," Ryder said. "We have time." Outside, Ghost's voice came through the earpiece. "West team is clear. We have 12 individuals secured and separated. 2 more unaccounted for. Think they moved south before we close the perimeter. Axel's men are running them down now." Ryder clicked acknowledgement and stood. He looked down at Vance, who was zip-tied to his own chair and radiating the particular fury of a professional who has been outmaneuvered cleanly and knows it. "You want to tell me something," Ryder said. "It wasn't a question." "You're not federal," Vance said. "You're not law enforcement. You're a motorcycle club, which means you have no jurisdiction, no authority, and no legal standing to hold me or any of my men." "That's all true," Ryder agreed. "And yet here we are. What are you going to do with me?" "Right now, nothing. We're going to sit here and wait And while we wait, you're going to think about something. He put his hand on the back of Vance's chair and leaned in. That girl you've been trying to find for 6 days, the one hiding in the maintenance shaft. She's not hiding anymore. She's outside right now, eating a protein bar and watching my men run your people off this bridge like they were amateurs. And everything she's been guarding for 4 months, everything her father put together before you or someone like you put him in a ditch on a county road, is still exactly where she left it. Safe, intact, waiting. He paused. You understand what that means. Your employer understands what that means. And in a few hours, a whole lot of other people are going to understand it too. Something moved in Vance's eyes. Not fear exactly. Something adjacent to fear, the recognition of a situation that has moved past the point of recovery. I don't know what girl you're talking about, he said, but he said it like a man reading from a script he no longer believed in. Sure, Ryder said and walked to the truck door. He stepped out into the rain and stood for a moment, letting the cold hit him, because after 10 minutes inside a warm truck, his body needed the reset. 14 men secured, 2 running. The bridge operation was effectively finished. They had done it in under 25 minutes from the moment he had made the decision on the North Road, and they had done it without firing a single shot, which was the part he cared about most, because a shot fired would have brought the kind of attention that made the rest of the night very complicated. He walked back toward the north where Emily was. She was sitting exactly where he had left her, which surprised him for a moment. And then, didn't she had nowhere else to be? And more than that, she had chosen to stay because she was waiting to see how it came out. The protein bar wrapper was folded neatly on the grass beside her. She had her knees pulled up and her arms wrapped around them, and she was watching the bridge structure with an expression that was hard to read in the dark, but Ryder had been reading hard expressions for a long time. It's done, he said. She looked up at him. All of them. 14 secured, 2 ran my men are on them. The command truck is neutralized. She closed her eyes for 3 seconds. Opened them. Vance, in custody, he's not going anywhere. Emily nodded slowly, like she was processing a mathematical result she had expected, but still needed to verify. Then she said, he won't talk easily. He's not the kind of man who talks from pressure alone. He'll wait for a lawyer or for his employer to make contact or for a situation that gives him leverage. Ryder looked at her. You got all of that from a drainage shaft. I got all of that from 6 days of listening, she said. He runs his men like someone who has done this in military or paramilitary contexts. His orders are specific. He uses call signs consistently. He maintains operational security even in private conversation. That level of discipline doesn't break from a bad night. It breaks from a change in circumstances. She paused. If he believes the evidence is already in federal hands, he might calculate that his employer can no longer protect him. That would change his math. And is it, Ryder asked, in federal hands? Not yet, Emily said. She looked up at him steadily. It's in mine. The rain was slowing. The first suggestion of it, the way the individual drops started to space out the drumming on the road surface, thinning from a roar to a rattle, registered without either of them commenting on it. The kind of detail that exists and doesn't matter, and somehow marks time anyway. Show me, Ryder said. Emily got to her feet without help, and Ryder noticed the way she did it. The careful distribution of weight, the instinctive favoring of her right side, the slight stiffness in her lower back, that spoke of months sleeping on a hard surface. She was young, and her body absorbed punishment the way young bodies do, but 4 months on a maintenance ledge had left its marks. She led him around the east support base to a point where the concrete met the embankment at an angle, and then she stopped and said, I need to go up alone first. The access point is specific, and I rigged it. She looked at him. It's not a trap. I just don't want anyone to disturb the setup before I've cleared it myself. Take your time. She went up in a way that made clear she had done it hundreds of times. Her hands and feet finding holds in the concrete that Ryder couldn't see from below, moving quickly and quietly and efficiently, and then she was gone above the sight line of his headlamp. He heard nothing for 40 seconds. Then a soft sound like a latch releasing. Then her voice from above, all right. Am I home? When she came back down, she was carrying a waterproof case the size of a large backpack. She had it strapped to her back, and she descended with the same practiced ease, and when her feet hit the ground, she swung the case around and held it with both arms the way you hold something irreplaceable. Everything, she said. Soil samples, water samples, GPS logs from every site he visited, engineering diagrams with dispersal models, an encrypted USB drive with digital copies of all of it, and 3 notebooks, his handwriting dated entries, chain of evidence documentation. She paused. He was building a case that would stand up in court. He knew it might have to. Ryder looked at the case, at the electrical tape on its edges that matched the electrical tape on her coat, at the rubber cargo strap that he could now see was old, slightly faded, the kind of strap from a piece of luggage that had been repurposed with care. That's his flannel shirt, Ryder said quietly. He had seen it when she swung the case, a piece of blue-gray flannel used as padding around the sample jars. Emily looked down at it. He wore it every weekend. He said it was his thinking shirt. A pause. I used the sleeves first, the body of it last when I ran out of padding material. I didn't want to, but I needed to keep the jars from breaking more than I needed to keep the shirt whole. Another pause, shorter. I think he would have agreed with that decision. Ryder said nothing. There were times when the only right response was silence, and this was one of them. Axel came around the base of the support column at a controlled jog. 2 runners are down, minor resistance, nothing serious. We've got them with the rest. He looked at the case in Emily's arms, then at Ryder. That what I think it is? Yeah. Axel let out a long breath. So what exactly are we holding here? Give it to me straight. Ryder looked at Emily. You want to answer that? She shifted the case in her arms and spoke with the same flat precision she had used on the road. My father spent 14 months investigating illegal toxic waste disposal operations conducted by subsidiaries of Bartholomew Creed's chemical company, Creed Industrial Solutions, headquartered in the state capital. The disposal sites are located along a 14-mile stretch of the river below this bridge. The material includes Class B hazardous industrial byproducts, carcinogenic at prolonged exposure levels. The dumping has been occurring for at least 6 years. My father traced the regulatory approval chain and identified a state environmental official who was blocking internal reports and suppressing inspection requests in exchange for payments routed through a shell company in Delaware. She took a breath. The evidence in this case is sufficient to support federal environmental crime charges, criminal conspiracy charges, and at minimum 1 count of corruption against a state official. My father believed it was also sufficient to support an investigation into his own death once federal authorities had the primary case to use as leverage. Axel stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Ryder and said in a voice that was entirely flat, She's 15. I know. She has been sitting on this alone for 4 months. I know. And someone ordered a 14-man hit team to this bridge specifically to stop this case from moving. Yeah. Axel was quiet for a moment. Then Bartholomew Creed. That name rings something. It should, Emily said. He donated $4 million to the governor's infrastructure campaign last cycle. He has 3 state legislators on retainer. He's been named in 2 previous environmental complaints that were both quietly dismissed before reaching the federal level. She paused. My father said Creed was the kind of man who bought his protection in advance so that by the time anyone came looking, there was nothing left to find. Except your father's case, Axel said. Except this, Emily said and held up the case. The rain stopped. Not gradually the way rain had been doing things all night, the slow withdrawal, the spacing out of drops, but suddenly cleanly like a door being shut. One moment it was raining, and the next moment the world was just wet and cold and very still, and the sound of the river beneath the bridge was audible for the first time, steady and dark and moving, carrying whatever had been put into it downstream to wherever downstream went. Ryder listened to the river for a moment. Then he said, We need to make some calls. I thought no outside contact, Axel said. That was before we had the full picture. Ryder looked at Emily. You said your father believed the evidence would support an investigation into his death. Is there anyone federal level, not state, anyone he trusted, anyone he had been in contact with about this case before he died? Emily considered this. He mentioned one name, a federal EPA investigator named Carol Hargrove. He said she had reached out to him 6 months before he died about a pattern of regulatory suppression she'd been tracking in 3 states. He hadn't given her anything yet. He was waiting until his documentation was complete. She paused. I don't know if she's still in that position. I don't know if she's trustworthy, but he said her name in a way that suggested he believed she was. That's enough to start, Ryder said. He looked at Axel. Get me a satellite phone, not a cell, not anything registered to anyone in this crew. Ghost keeps one in his kit. On it. And get someone to stay with Emily. Not guarding her, staying with her. There's a difference. Someone who knows how to be quiet without making it feel like silence. Axel almost smiled. I'll send Decker. He barely talks. Good. Emily watched Axel move away and then looked at Ryder. You believe all of it, she said. Not a question, an observation. I do. Most adults don't. Not immediately. They want to verify. They want a second source. They want documentation before they'll commit to believing a kid. I've been in situations where the most accurate information came from the person everyone else discounted, Ryder said. You learn to pay attention to what's actually being said rather than who's saying it. She looked at him for a moment. My father used to say something like that. He said the truth doesn't care about your credentials. It just sits there being true until someone decides to look at it. Your father sounds like he was a careful man. He was. Her voice was still even, still controlled. But something at the edges was fraying slightly, not enough to break, just enough to be visible. The way the hem of a garment shows wear before the fabric itself gives way. He was the most careful man I ever knew, and it still wasn't enough. Ryder looked at her, the case in her arms, the electrical tape on her coat, the bare feet on the wet grass that he had not been able to do anything about yet, because there hadn't been time and they were not through this yet, not fully, not until the calls were made and the evidence was transferred and a chain of custody existed that didn't run through a motorcycle club. It was enough, he said. He built something that lasted, and you kept it. That's both of you together across whatever happened between then and now. Don't subtract him from the result. Emily was quiet. The river moved below them. The bridge dripped. Then she said, he called me the night he died, just before it happened. He said 7 words, and then the line went dead. I've been carrying those 7 words for 11 months. Ryder waited. He said, Emily, the files are already moving. Watch over. She stopped. That was it. That was all of it. The weight of it settled between them without comment. I think he was watching over me, she said finally. I think that's how it was supposed to end. But the line cut before he finished, and I've spent 11 months not knowing if he was telling me to watch over the files or telling me that he would watch over me, or both. She tightened her arms around the case. I decided to act as if it was both. From somewhere behind them, Ryder heard Ghost's voice running a count, systematic, methodical. The sound of a man verifying that what he has secured is still secured. 14 voices, varying levels of cooperation. The operation under the bridge was fully contained. The night was cracking open toward morning without anyone having noticed when the shift began. Inside the command truck, Razor Vance sat in his chair and looked at the dark monitor screens and began slowly, carefully, with the discipline of a man who has practiced this, to recalculate. He had missed a check-in. The contingency protocol had already activated. Someone somewhere was already asking questions. Someone was already calling Bartholomew Creed's people with a problem report. And Creed's people were going to want to know why a 15-man tactical operation had gone completely silent on what should have been the simplest elimination assignment of the year. Vance knew what the silence looked like from the outside. He knew exactly what it communicated. And he knew with the cold, unhurried certainty of a man who had been in this business long enough to understand its internal economics that the moment Creed's organization decided he was a liability rather than an asset was the moment his own position became extremely dangerous. The girl was outside. The evidence was with her. The motorcycles were not the convoy he had been told they were, or they were something more than that, something nobody had accounted for when they planned this operation. And whoever had warned them, he stopped on that thought, whoever had warned them, someone inside the network had given the convoy its route, and that same network now had a problem. And if someone on the inside had turned, if the leak ran both directions, then Vance was sitting in the middle of a situation that was no longer about a bridge or an evidence case or a 15-year-old girl. It was about who was going to talk first. Vance made his decision with the pragmatic speed of a man who has run out of better options. When Ryder came back to the truck door 4 minutes later with a satellite phone and a specific question about Bartholomew Creed, Razor Vance was already talking. Vance talked the way men talk when they have done the math and don't like the answer. Not fast, not emotional. He talked the way a man empties a safe when he has already decided the contents are worth less than his life, methodical, deliberate, watching Ryder's face for confirmation that each piece he handed over was landing with the weight he intended. He had been in this business long enough to know that information was currency and that the exchange rate shifted dramatically depending on how much the other party already knew. He started with the operational structure. 14 men hired through a private security contractor based in Nevada, legitimate on paper, specializing in corporate asset protection, with a client list that included 3 Fortune 500 companies and 2 foreign mining operations. The Nevada contractor was a cutout, 2 layers removed from Creed Industrial Solutions. The payment had moved through a real estate holding company in Arizona, which moved it through a consulting firm in Delaware, which paid the Nevada contractor's invoice for what was documented as site security assessment services. Clean, Ryder said. Extremely, Vance confirmed. If you pulled the contractor's books tomorrow, you'd find a legitimate invoice for legitimate services. The paperwork is airtight. It was built to survive federal scrutiny. But the order came from Creed. Vance paused. Not hesitation, calculation. He was deciding how specific to be. The order came from someone inside Creed Industrial Solutions. I dealt with one contact. I was not given a name. I was given a secure email address and a payment structure and a target package. What was in the target package? Route information for the convoy, timing, vehicle count, the bridge location as the optimal interdiction point. He stopped. And the secondary target, the girl. Name, physical description, approximate location under the bridge. Photograph. The word landed like something dropped from height. Photograph, Ryder repeated. 3 months old. She didn't look like that anymore when I saw her tonight, but the face was right. He met Ryder's eyes. Someone had been watching her for a long time before I was hired. This was not a reactive operation. Someone knew she was there and decided to wait until the right moment to close it. Ryder kept his voice level through a concentrated act of will. Why the convoy? What's the connection between 17 bikers and a 15-year-old girl guarding her father's evidence? Vance looked at him steadily. Because the convoy wasn't random. Someone told my contact that the girl had made contact with your organization, that she was going to use you to move the evidence. The bridge operation was designed to eliminate both problems at once, the evidence and the people helping her move it. The silence that followed was specific and sharp. She hadn't made contact with us, Ryder said slowly. We didn't even know she existed until she ran into our headlights tonight. I know that now, Vance said, which means whoever gave your contact that information either made a mistake or manufactured a reason to move against your organization specifically, Vance finished. Yes, I arrived at the same conclusion approximately 10 minutes ago. Ryder stood up from the equipment case he had been sitting on and walked to the truck door and back, not because he needed to move, but because staying still in that moment would have required more control than the situation warranted. Someone had fed false intelligence to a corporate hit operation. Someone had inserted the Hells Angels into a federal evidence case they had nothing to do with. Someone had tried to get 17 men killed under a highway bridge and framed the whole thing as a connected operation, which would have muddied the waters around Daniel Mercer's death, around Creed's liability, around everything, made it look like a criminal organization had been sitting on the evidence for reasons of their own. Who was your contact? Ryder asked. He was back to level now. The brief walk had done what he needed it to do. I told you, no name, secure email. But you have the address. I have the address. Vance said it carefully, like a man laying a card face up on a table and watching to see what it buys him. And I have the 3 emails, printed, in the document case under the driver's seat. Ryder looked at him for a long moment. Why are you telling me this? Because my employer has already been notified that this operation failed. I missed a check-in 40 minutes ago. The contingency protocol activated automatically. Right now, someone inside Creed's organization is deciding whether I am an asset to be recovered or a liability to be managed. He held Ryder's gaze without blinking. I have been in this business for 16 years. I know exactly what that calculation looks like and exactly how long it takes. I have approximately 4 hours before the math stops working in my favor. A pause. You are not law enforcement, But you have 17 men, a contained operation site, and a federal evidence case that makes you the most valuable card on the table right now. I would rather be on your side of this than the alternative. Ryder reached under the driver's seat and found the document case exactly where Vance said it would be. He did not open it inside the truck. He walked out into the pre-dawn air. The rain fully gone, now the sky holding that deep, colorless quality that exists in the hour before light begins, and he stood outside and opened it and read what was inside, and when he was done reading, he stood very still for a moment with the papers in his hand. Then he walked to where Emily was sitting with Decker, who had lived up to his reputation by sitting in complete comfortable silence for the past 40 minutes, while Emily had not slept and had not talked and had held her father's case in her lap like something sacred. She looked up when Ryder came close. She read his face. "What did he tell you?" she asked. "A lot," Ryder said. "Some of it you already knew. Some of it is new." He crouched down to her level. "Someone told Vance's people that you had made contact with us, that we were moving the evidence tonight." Emily went very still. "That's not true." "I know. I didn't contact anyone. I've been under that bridge for 4 months, and I didn't contact anyone because I didn't know who was safe." "I know," Ryder said again. "Which means someone manufactured that connection. Someone wanted us both under that bridge tonight." Emily's mind was running. He could see it, the way her eyes moved slightly without focusing on anything external, tracking something internal. She was fast. He had already established that. She was faster than most adults he knew when it came to connecting things that looked unrelated. "They couldn't find the evidence," she said slowly. "They've known I was here for a long time. You said he had a photograph 3 months old. They've been watching me, and they couldn't find where I'd hidden it. So they needed to move me or move the evidence to create an opportunity." She paused. "If they invented a connection to your convoy, it does 2 things. It gives them a reason to stage the bridge operation, eliminates me, eliminates the convoy, creates chaos. And if any of the evidence surfaced afterward, it would look like a motorcycle club had been sitting on it. Compromised. Tainted. Which tanks the evidentiary value in court," Ryder said. "Which was the point." She looked at him with those flat, precise eyes. Whoever is running this inside Creed's organization is not panicking. This is a structured response. They've been managing this problem for 11 months. My father's death bought them time. Watching me bought them more time. This operation was supposed to close it permanently. It didn't. "No," she said, "it didn't." Ghost appeared at Ryder's shoulder. "We've got a problem." "Define it." 2 of the secured men are not Nevada contractor hires. Different equipment, different radio configuration, different everything. I pulled their gear, and it doesn't match the others. These 2 are something else brought in separately, running on a different comms channel. Ryder looked at him. "Internal." "That's my read. Corporate security, not contractor. Meaning Creed has his own people in here separate from the Vance operation, watching the Vance operation." Ghost's voice was flat and informational, but his eyes said what his voice didn't. Someone didn't fully trust their own hired team. Emily made a small sound, not quite a word, and Ryder looked at her. "They're monitors," she said. "I heard them, 2 of them. They stayed separate from the others. They didn't eat with them. They didn't talk with them. I thought they were senior command, but they weren't. They were watching Vance." She looked at Ryder. "Creed sent his own people to watch the contractors, which means he's done this before. He's used Vance's firm before, and he doesn't fully trust them, so he embeds oversight." She paused. "Those 2 men have direct contact with Creed's internal security team. If they've already transmitted..." "Ghost," Ryder said, "already on it. Pulled their comms hardware the moment I flagged them. If anything went out in the last hour, it went out before I got to them." Ghost paused. "I don't think it did. Their transmission log shows last contact at 11:40 p.m. before we moved in, but I can't be certain." The calculation was immediate, and everyone in earshot ran it simultaneously. If Creed's internal people had gone dark before the operation was neutralized, Creed's organization would interpret that silence as operational, the job in progress comms discipline being maintained. That bought time, but the moment the check-in window closed with no confirmation of success, the silence became something else entirely. "How long?" Ryder asked Ghost. "Based on the transmission log schedule I found in the hardware, next check-in window opens in 90 minutes. 90 minutes, Axel said from behind them. He had come up quietly carrying 2 paper cups of something hot from wherever Decker had produced a camping stove in the last hour. He handed one to Emily without ceremony, like it was the obvious thing to do, and held the other. So we have 90 minutes before Creed's people know this went wrong. And then the response comes, Emily said. She had both hands wrapped around the cup and she was looking at the ground. And the response will be bigger than this. Creed has resources. If he knows the evidence survived, and it's in the hands of people who can move it, he won't send 14 men next time. He won't get the chance, Ryder said. He pulled out the satellite phone. The number he dialed was not Carol Hargrove's, not yet. It was a number he had been given 3 years ago by a man who worked in federal organized crime interdiction. A number he had never used, a number he had memorized precisely because the man who gave it to him had said, use this when you're holding something too big to carry alone and too important to put down. The phone rang 4 times. Then a voice rough with interrupted sleep. This better be real. It's real, Ryder said. I have a federal environmental evidence case, a corporate homicide, a corrupted state official, and a 14-man interdicted tactical operation, all connected to Bartholomew Creed and Creed Industrial Solutions. I have a cooperative witness who ran the operation. I have documents. I have physical evidence. And I have approximately 88 minutes before the people who ordered this figure out. It failed and escalate. He paused. Tell me what you need from me. The voice on the other end was quiet for 4 seconds. Then location. Ryder gave it. Don't move. Don't transfer anything. Don't let anyone leave that site. I'm making 3 calls and I'll be back to you in 15 minutes. The line went dead. Ryder looked at the phone for a moment, then at Emily. 88 minutes, he said. Okay, she said. She was still holding the cup. Okay. She said it the way people say a word when they need to make it real by speaking it when the internal version of it hasn't fully landed yet. Decker, who had been silent for the better part of an hour, said quietly, You did good, kid. Emily looked at him. He was a large man, Decker broad through the shoulders, weathered in the face with the kind of stillness that came from having been in a lot of situations and learned that stillness was usually the right response. He was looking at her with something uncomplicated in his expression. Not pity, not admiration exactly, just acknowledgement. The simple recognition of one person who had done a hard thing by another person who understood what hard things cost. Emily looked away first. She took a long drink from the cup. It was coffee dark, no sugar, the kind that tasted like it had been brewed with a specific intention of waking the dead. My father used to drink it like this, she said. To no one in particular. To the air. He said anything weaker than black was just brown water. Nobody responded to that, which was the right response. Ryder walked back to the command truck. He stood in the door and looked at Vance, who had been sitting in his rigged chair for the better part of an hour and who had the look of a man who had made his decision and was now simply waiting for the consequences to develop around him. Federal response is incoming, Ryder said. 80-something minutes. Vance nodded. Good. You understand what you're walking into. Better than the alternative, Vance said. He had said that before in slightly different words. He meant it the same way both times. There's one more thing I didn't tell you. Ryder waited. The state environmental official. The one who was blocking the reports, suppressing the inspections. His name is Richard Toll, Deputy Director of the State Environmental Quality Authority. Vance said the name with the flat effect of someone reading from a document. He's not just on Creed's payroll. He's been actively feeding Creed information about federal EPA inquiry patterns, which investigators are active, which cases are being prioritized when the oversight windows open and close. He's been functioning as an intelligence asset inside the regulatory structure for at least 4 years. A pause. And he knew about Daniel Mercer. He flagged Mercer's investigation to Creed's legal team 8 months before Mercer died. The weight of that was specific and terrible. 8 months. Daniel Mercer had been dead for 11 months, which meant Richard Toll had handed him to Bartholomew Creed 3 months into his investigation, long before the evidence was complete, long before anyone outside a very small circle should have known Daniel Mercer's name. How do you know this? Ryder asked. Because I was hired to surveil Mercer for 6 weeks before the decision was made, Vance said. His voice did not change. He said it the way a man says the most damning thing about himself, without affect, without plea, with the exhausted precision of someone who has run out of the energy required to maintain a pretense. I watched him. I documented his movements. I reported his location, his schedule, his contact list. I did not know what the information would be used for. That is not an excuse. It is a fact. The truck was very quiet. The county road, Ryder said. I wasn't there. I want to be clear about that. What happened on the county road, I was not part of that. My contract ended 6 days before. He held Ryder's eyes. I know what you're thinking, and I understand why you're thinking it. I'm telling you the truth because it's the only card I have left that's worth anything. Ryder stood in the truck doorway and looked at Razor Vance, this lean, hard professional man who had spent 16 years doing things that existed in the spaces between legal and illegal, who had watched a father and not known, or perhaps not let himself know what he was handing to people who would use it to end that father's life. And he felt something that was not sympathy and not judgment. It was something older and more tired than either of those things. The recognition of how many of the worst outcomes in the world came not from evil, but from professional detachment, from the practiced ability to not ask what the information was for. Write it down, Ryder said. Everything you just told me. Toll's name, the timeline, your role in the Mercer surveillance. Write it on paper, sign it, date it. That's a confession. Yes. Vance looked at him for a moment. Then he said, can someone untie my right hand? Ryder found a pen in the truck's storage tray in a legal pad under the monitor array and untied Vance's right hand and watched him write for 12 minutes without stopping. Outside, the sky was doing something. Not lightning yet, that was still 20 minutes away, but changing in quality, the absolute black of 3 a.m. shifting towards something that had depth in it, something that acknowledged the existence of morning even before committing to it. Emily felt it before she saw it, the shift in the air, the way the cold changed character from the cold of deep night to the cold of early morning, different specific carrying with it the distant suggestion of a world that was going to resume. She looked at the waterproof case in her lap, at the rubber cargo strap, at the worn corner where she had gripped it 10,000 times in 4 months, the material compressed and shaped to the pattern of her hand. He wrote in these notebooks every night, she said. Decker was still beside her, still quiet. She was not talking to him exactly, or she was, but not requiring a response. He had this system, date, location, observation, significance. Date, location, observation, significance. He said the discipline of the format kept him from editorializing. He said the facts were enough if you just laid them down right. She ran her thumb along the case edge. His handwriting got worse near the end. I can tell in the last notebook. The entries are shorter. The handwriting is more compressed, like he was writing faster or under more pressure, or both. Decker said, he knew. He knew something was coming. Yeah, she looked at the ground. He kept going anyway. That's the thing about people like that, Decker said. They don't stop just because they know it's going to cost them. They just try to get as much done as possible before the bill comes due. Emily was quiet for a long time. Then, is that what you do? Decker seemed to consider this with genuine seriousness. I try, he said. Some days better than others. The satellite phone in Ryder's hand rang. He picked up before the second ring. 3 federal agencies are spinning up, the voice said. EPA Criminal Investigation Division, FBI Organized Crime Unit, and IRS Creed's financial structure has been on their radar for 2 years. This gives them the hook they needed. First response team will reach you in 64 minutes. You need to maintain site security and chain of custody on the evidence. Do not, and I need you to hear this clearly, do not allow anyone to leave and do not allow anyone outside your group to access the evidence case until federal agents are on site with badge credentials you can verify. Understood. One more thing. The voice paused. The girl, Emily Carter, she's in the system. She was flagged as a missing juvenile 11 months ago when her father died. Welfare check was filed. She was never located. She needs to be declared found and placed under federal witness protection as a material witness. That happens the moment agents arrive. You need to prepare her for that conversation. I'll tell her. She's going to be all right. She just needs to make it 64 more minutes. Ryder looked across the embankment to where Emily sat with her father's case in her lap and Decker's uncomplicated quiet beside her. 64 minutes. After 4 months, 11 months, a county road and a maintenance shaft, and 6 days of listening through a drainage pipe to men planning to erase her. 64 minutes. He walked toward her, and as he walked, he felt something settle in his chest that had been unsettled since the moment she appeared in his headlights, the last piece of the operational picture clicking into place, the shape of the whole night finally visible now that the darkness was beginning just barely to lift. He was 10 feet away when his earpiece activated, and Ghost's voice came through, stripped of its usual flatness, carrying something Ryder had not heard in Ghost's voice in 11 years of riding together. "Ryder," Ghost said, "we have a vehicle. North Road, coming fast, no lights." The vehicle came in hard and fast with no lights, which told Ryder everything he needed to know about who was driving it. An innocent driver runs dark by accident, a forgotten switch, a moment of distraction. A professional runs dark on purpose. And a professional running dark on a county road at 4 in the morning toward a bridge that was supposed to be a clean operation site meant one of two things. Either someone was coming to confirm the job was done, or someone had already figured out it wasn't and was coming to finish it themselves. "How many in the vehicle?" Ryder said into the earpiece. "Can't tell yet. Big SUV moving fast, quarter-mile out." Ghost's voice was tight but controlled. "Want me to block the road?" "No, let it come. Get everyone off the sight line and get Emily back under cover, not the bridge, the east embankment behind the concrete base. Move." He was already turning toward Emily. Decker had heard the earpiece transmission and was already on his feet, one hand out to Emily, not grabbing her. Just offering the difference between the two was enormous, and Decker understood that without being told. Emily took his hand and stood in one motion, the waterproof case already tucked under her left arm, and Ryder saw that she had understood the situation from his face alone before a single word was spoken. "Someone's coming," she said. "Yeah. Creed's people. Most likely." She did not freeze. She did not ask additional questions. She moved with Decker toward the east concrete base, and she moved fast, and Ryder turned back to the road and said into the earpiece, "Ghost, Axel, form up. If this goes sideways, the only priority is the girl in the case. Everything else is secondary." "Copy," Axel said. "Copy," Ghost said. And then a beat later, "Vehicle is stopping, north shoulder, 200 yards out." The doors opened. Ryder heard them, the mechanical sounds carrying clearly in the pre-dawn stillness. 4 doors, which meant at minimum 4 people. He counted the sounds and landed on 4 and held that number. 4 out, Ghost confirmed. "They're on foot now, moving toward the bridge on the shoulder." 4 people moving toward a bridge where they expected to find a completed operation. 14 secured bikers, 1 dead girl, and 1 recovered evidence case. Instead, they were walking into 17 Hells Angels. 14 secured mercenaries, a cooperative witness, and the most valuable federal evidence cache in the state. Ryder almost felt sorry for them. Almost. He positioned himself at the north approach, visible, which was the point. If they were coming to confirm, he wanted to be the first thing they saw standing in the open, no weapon visible, presenting the ambiguity of a situation that hadn't resolved yet. Let them make the first interpretive error. Let them commit to a read of the scene before they had the full picture. The 4 figures materialized from the darkness at a range of about 60 yards. 3 of them were built like Vance's men, contractor types, dressed for field work. Hands at their sides with the ready stillness of people carrying hardware. The 4th was different. The 4th was wearing a suit jacket over a collared shirt, expensive fabric even in the bad light, and he walked with the particular posture of a man who was accustomed to having the 3 other men absorb problems on his behalf. That one was not a contractor. Ryder waited. The 4 of them stopped at 40 yards. The suited man said something to the man on his left, too low to carry. The man on his left raised a flashlight and put the beam on Ryder. "Operation status," the suited man said. His voice was precise and flat and controlled. The voice of someone who gave orders in conference rooms and expected them to be executed without discussion. "Complicated," Ryder said. A pause. The flashlight held steady. "Where is Vance?" "Busy." Another pause longer. Ryder could feel the calculation happening across 40 yards of wet asphalt, the suited man running the math, reading the scene, reaching the conclusion that something had gone wrong in a way that the contingency protocols had not accounted for. "Who are you?" the suited man asked. "Someone who's been waiting for you," Ryder said. Come on in, we have a lot to talk about. The three contractor types moved, and Ryder said clearly and without heat, I wouldn't. There are 11 men in the dark between you and me right now, and they are significantly less patient than I am. Come in slow hands where I can see them, and this goes easy. Make a decision I don't like, and this goes a different way. A pause. Your choice. You have about 4 seconds. The suited man put his hand out to his left, a flat downward gesture, and the three contractors went still. Good, Ryder said. Now walk toward me. They did. When they were 10 feet away and Ghost Crew had materialized from the dark on both sides of them, and the contractor types had been efficiently relieved of their hardware with the practiced ease of men who had done this before, Ryder looked at the suited man directly for the first time. He was in his 50s, silver-haired, well-maintained, with the groomed, expensive look of someone who made choices about his appearance the way he made choices about everything else, strategically for effect. He had the kind of face that probably photographed well in annual reports. He was looking at Ryder with an expression that was trying very hard to remain composed and not fully succeeding. You're not Vance's people, the man said. No, Ryder agreed. I'm the convoy. Something shifted in the man's face. The convoy was supposed to be neutralized. Yeah, we heard about that plan. Didn't care for it. Ryder kept his hands in his jacket pockets and his voice conversational. You want to tell me your name? Or do you want to wait until the federal agents get here and... He checked the time, 51 minutes, and let them ask. The man said nothing. That's all, right, Jim, Ryder said. Vance already wrote a lot of things down, including a name Richard Toll, Deputy Director of State Environmental Quality Authority. He wrote about the Delaware consulting firm and the Arizona holding company and the Nevada contractor. He wrote about Daniel Mercer in the 6 weeks of surveillance before the county road. He watched the man's face. He wrote about the secure email address, the one that sent the target package. He paused. Is that your email address? The man's composure held for 3 more seconds. Then it didn't. I want a lawyer, he said. You'll get one, Ryder said, in 51 minutes. He turned away and walked back toward the east embankment because the man in the suit was contained and the 3 contractors were contained, and none of that was the thing that mattered most right now. He walked to the concrete base where Decker had taken Emily, and he crouched down and said, 4 more. One of them is wearing a suit and asking for a lawyer, which means he knows what he's carrying. Emily looked at him. Is he? I don't know yet. Could be Creed directly. Could be a senior executive running the problem management side. Either way, he came personally, which means the operation is more important than any of these people let on in their paperwork. Emily processed this. If he came personally, it means he didn't trust anyone else to confirm the outcome. He couldn't afford a miscommunication at this stage. She shifted the case in her arms. That means the evidence is more dangerous to him than I understood. Something in my father's files is worse than what I know about. Ryder looked at her. Is that possible? Is there something in those files you haven't fully read? The USB drive, she said immediately. I couldn't open it. It's encrypted. My father was the only one who had the decryption key, and he... She stopped. He gave me a phrase, a passphrase. He told me the night before he called. It was in a letter he sent through the mail, regular mail, physical envelope, that arrived 2 days after he died. She met Ryder's eyes. I've been carrying the USB drive for 4 months, and I didn't know if the passphrase would work because I had no computer and no power, and I didn't want to try it somewhere public and expose what was on it. What's on it? Ryder said slowly. Your father encrypted something separately from the physical evidence, something he considered more sensitive than the soil samples in the GP's OES logs. Yes. What did he tell you about it? Emily looked at the case. He said the samples prove the crime, the drive proves the criminal. A pause. I didn't fully understand the difference until right now. Ryder stood up. He looked toward the north road where the suited man was standing with Ghost Crew around him, contained and lawyering up and carrying whatever he was carrying. The samples prove the crime. The drive proves the criminal. Daniel Mercer had been a careful man. He had split his evidence, deliberately physical documentation of the environmental violation in analog form, protected by his daughter's body, and the electrical tape on a waterproof case. And whatever was on that drive, financial records, communications, direct evidence of criminal orders, encrypted separately, protected by a passphrase delivered by post designed to survive, even if everything else was taken. He had planned for Emily to be the one who delivered both. He had built a system that required her to survive. When the federal agents get here, Ryder said, the first thing we hand them is the physical case. Standard chain of custody. But the USB drive that goes to Carol Hargrove specifically. Your father mentioned her, he trusted her. We make sure she's the one who takes the drive, and we make sure Emily is present when it's opened, because the passphrase comes from Emily, and the connection between the drive and the evidence chain comes from Emily's testimony. He looked at her. Can you do that? Yes, she said. No hesitation. It's going to be a long day after a very long night. I've had 4 months of long nights, she said. I can handle one more. Decker made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was adjacent to one, and Ryder almost smiled, and for a moment the four of them, a motorcycle club president, a rota sergeant, a man famous for his silence, and a 15-year-old girl in garbage bags and electrical tape, existed in a pocket of something that felt remarkably like normalcy, which was its own kind of miracle given the circumstances. Then Axel's voice came through the earpiece, and the normalcy dissolved. Ryder Bashir, the suited man, I ran his face against the name Vance wrote down. A pause. It's not Toll. Ryder straightened. Say that again. Richard Toll is the state official. This isn't him. I pulled Creed Industrial Solutions from a business registry on Ghost's phone. Senior executive team photographs included. Axel's voice was doing the careful, flat thing it did when the information was large. The man in the suit is Creed's chief legal officer. Name is Warren Phelps. He's been with Creed Industrial for 19 years. He runs the Legal and Regulatory Affairs Division. Another pause, which means he didn't come to confirm an operation. He came to retrieve something. The USB drive, Ryder said. Has to be. They know it exists. They know Vance couldn't find it. They sent the legal architect of the whole operation to personally recover it, which means whatever is on that drive is enough to bury all of them, Ryder finished. He turned and looked at Emily. She had heard enough of the one-sided conversation to read the shape of it. Her arms were tighter around the case. Phelps, she said quietly. Warren Phelps. You know the name? My father's notebooks, last entry 4 days before he died. Her voice was very controlled. He wrote Phelps, signed every disposal contract. Phelps approved every regulatory submission. Phelps wrote the memos authorizing the shell company payments. If there is a criminal case, Phelps is the case. She looked at Ryder. My father put Phelps on that USB drive. He built a file specifically on Phelps because he knew Creed would hide behind the corporate structure. He said, you don't go after the king through the front door. You go after the person who signs everything the king doesn't want his name on. The weight of 11 months of planning and Daniel Mercer's careful, methodical, dangerous planning settled over the embankment like something physical. He had known. He had built the case knowing exactly who he was building it against and exactly what it would cost him, and he had still built it, and he had still called his daughter the night it caught up with him, and the last 7 words out of his mouth had been about making sure what he built survived him. Ryder walked to where Warren Phelps was standing. Phelps looked at him with the expression of a man managing a situation he still believed he could control, which was a form of delusion Ryder recognized and had no patience for. Warren Phelps, Ryder said. Something shifted in Phelps' face. Not much. Enough. You signed the contracts, Ryder said. You approved the disposal operations. You wrote the memos. He let that sit for exactly 3 seconds. And Daniel Mercer put all of it in an encrypted drive that has been sitting in a waterproof case under this bridge for 4 months. And you came here personally tonight because you knew Vance hadn't found it, and you couldn't trust anyone else to recognize it if they saw it. Phelps said nothing. His composure was intact, but it was the composure of a structure that has taken one hit too many, technically still standing visibly compromised. The drive is safe, Ryder said. The girl is safe. The physical evidence is safe. Vance has given a written statement, and he checked the time, 43 minutes federal agents from 3 agencies are going to be on this site. He watched Phelps' face. You drove out here to prevent that. You're too late. Phelps closed his eyes for 2 seconds. Opened them. I want to speak with Vance. Vance is done talking to people who aren't federal agents, Ryder said. That ship sailed about an hour ago. You have no authority. I have 17 men, a contained site, 3 agencies, 43 minutes out. and a 15-year-old girl with her dead father's evidence in her arms who has been waiting 11 months for this moment. Ryder's voice was still level, still completely precisely level. I don't need authority. I need you to stand right there and not do anything that makes this worse for you than it already is. Phelps looked at him for a long moment. Then something in him, whatever it was that 19 years of running the legal architecture of a criminal enterprise had been holding up, went out. Not dramatically, not with tears or words or any of the external markers of collapse. It went out the way a light goes out when the power fails suddenly completely, and without any of the warning you would have preferred. He sat down on the embankment grass in his expensive suit jacket, and he did not say anything else. Ghost drifted to Ryder's shoulder. You believe that's it? I believe that's most of it, Ryder said. The USB drive is the last piece. Once that's open and documented, the case is complete. And Creed himself. Creed ordered it, Phelps executed it, Toll enabled it, Vance ran it. The drive ties all four of them together through the financial chain. Ryder looked toward the east embankment. Daniel Mercer built a case that didn't need any of them to confess. He built it so the documents did the talking. Ghost was quiet for a moment. Hell of an engineer. Yeah, Ryder said. Hell of a father, too. The sky was changing now in a way that was unmistakable, the first actual light. Not the pre-light depth shift of an hour ago, but genuine color. A dark blue at the eastern edge that was moving towards something warmer. Something that had the suggestion of morning in it, rather than just the absence of night. The river below the bridge was audible and constant, carrying its contaminated load downstream, the way it had been doing for 6 years, indifferent to everything happening above it. Emily came out from behind the concrete base. Decker was behind her, and she walked toward Ryder with the case under her arm, and she stopped 3 feet from Phelps, who was sitting on the grass and not looking at anything in particular. She looked at him for a long moment. Phelps felt the attention and looked up. When he saw who was standing in front of him, something moved through his face that was difficult to name. Not guilt exactly, not in its clean form, but the complicated and unwilling cousin of guilt that visits men who have spent years constructing careful distances between their decisions and their consequences, and are now standing directly in front of one of those consequences wearing a garbage bag coat and bare feet. Emily said, My father's name was Daniel Mercer. He was an environmental engineer. He had a thinking shirt, and he drove with both hands, and he checked his mirrors every 8 seconds, and he called me the night you had him killed to make sure I knew where to find his work. She held up the case. I found it. I kept it. And now it's going to do exactly what he built it to do. Phelps said nothing. There was nothing to say. Emily lowered the case and looked at Ryder. I want to be present when they open the drive, she said. I know I'm a minor and I know there will be protocols. I'm asking anyway. I'll push for it, Ryder said. No promises, but I'll push. She nodded. That's enough. 38 minutes later, the first federal vehicle came over the hill from the south, not the north, because the federal response team had been briefed on the vehicle situation at the North Road and had routed accordingly. 3 black SUVs and 2 unmarked sedans moving at speed, no sirens. Professional and deliberate and carrying exactly the kind of authority that the next phase of the morning was going to require. Ryder stood at the south road edge and watched them come and thought about the satellite phone call he had made and the 3 words the voice on the other end had said before hanging up. I'll handle it. He had believed them when they were spoken, and he believed them more now watching 5 federal vehicles close the distance on a bridge site that 45 minutes ago had been a tactical nightmare and was now somehow something else entirely. He heard Emily behind him say quietly, They're here. Yeah, he said. Is it over? He turned and looked at her, at the case, at the electrical tape and the worn corner and the rubber cargo strap that had done its job, at the bare feet on the wet grass that he was absolutely going to do something about the moment there was a 30-second window in which to do it. The hard part is over, he said. The long part is just starting. She looked at the federal vehicles pulling to a stop 30 yards away, at the doors opening, at the people climbing out with credentials and equipment, and the specific purposeful energy of people who had been woken up at 4 a.m. with a case that justified the interruption. I can do long, Emily said. I know you can, Ryder said. And then a woman climbed out of the second sedan, mid-50s short gray hair, a federal EPA badge on her jacket that caught the first real light of the morning, and she looked across the distance between them, and her eyes landed on Emily, and she walked toward her with the direct, unhurried purpose of someone who had been looking for something for a long time and had just found it. "Emily Carter," she said. Not a question. Emily looked at her. "Carol Hargrove." Hargrove stopped 2 feet away and looked at the case under Emily's arm. Her expression did something complicated and then steadied. "Your father called me," she said, 7 months before he died. He said he was building something and that when it was ready, he'd bring it to me. He never got the chance." She paused. "I've been following the trail he left for 11 months trying to find where it ended up." Emily's arms tightened on the case. Her voice when it came was still controlled, still doing the thing it had been doing it all night, holding the structure together through concentration and will. But it was doing it by a smaller margin now. The fraying at the edges was more visible. "He said your name," Emily said. "He told me if anything happened, your name was the one that mattered." Hargrove nodded. "I know. I found his letter, the one he sent to the EPA field office before." She stopped. "I found it 11 months ago, the week after he died, buried under 3 months of backlog mail. I've been trying to find you ever since." Emily looked at her for a long moment. Then she held out the case. "The USB drive is encrypted," she said. "I have the passphrase. I'll give it to you when you're ready to open it." A pause. "But I want to be in the room." Hargrove took the case with both hands, carefully the way you accept something you understand the weight of. "You'll be in the room," she said. "I promise you that." And something in Emily Carter, the last mechanism that had been holding the structure upright through 4 months of darkness and cold and silence and fear, released. Not loudly, not with the dramatic collapse of someone who has been waiting for permission to fall apart. Just a long, slow exhale, and her shoulders dropped 1/2 inch, and her face did something it had not done once in the entire night. It let go of the work of maintaining itself just for a moment, just enough to be visible. She did not cry, not yet. She was still saving that. But the saving of it was for the first time in 11 months, a choice rather than a necessity, and the difference between those two things was everything. Ryder watched from 20 feet away and said nothing. He turned back toward the bridge, toward the river moving below it in the early light, carrying its poison downstream toward wherever downstream went. Not for much longer, he thought, not much longer at all. The sun came up the way truth comes up after a long time underground. Not gently, not with apology, but with the absolute indifference of something that has always been there and was simply waiting for the conditions to be right. Carol Hargrove's team worked fast. 2 forensic evidence specialists had the waterproof case open and cataloged within 20 minutes of arriving on site, soil sample jars logged and labeled, GPS data copied to a federal server. Engineering diagrams photographed and documented, the 3 notebooks placed into individual evidence bags, with the kind of careful handling that told Emily these people understood what they were looking at. She stood 3 feet away and watched every item move from her father's case into the federal chain of custody, and she watched with the focused, tracking attention of someone who had been the sole guardian of these things for 4 months and was not yet fully ready to stop. Hargrove stood beside her through all of it, not talking, just present. Ryder had noticed that about Hargrove in the first 5 minutes. She had the rare quality of knowing when proximity was the thing and words were not, and she used it with the ease of someone who had learned it through hard experience rather than training. When the last notebook went into the evidence bag, Emily said, "The USB drive." Hargrove nodded. "Ready when you are." A forensic technician brought a government-issue laptop and set it on the hood of one of the federal SUVs, which was a flat enough surface and had enough light from the rising sun that everyone could see. Emily stepped up to it. The drive was already in the port. She had handed it to Hargrove herself, watched her sign the chain of custody receipt, watched the technician log the serial number. The passphrase is a sentence, Emily said. "My father used a sentence from a paper he published in 2019. Environmental ethics literature. He said nobody would guess a passphrase from a professional journal because nobody reads professional journals." A pause. "He was funny sometimes, in a quiet way." Hargrove looked at her. "Take your time." Emily looked at the prompt field on the screen. She said the passphrase once quietly to herself, not for anyone else, just to hear it in her own voice before she typed it, just to have that moment of contact with something her father had chosen deliberately, a sentence from his own published work, his own words protecting his own evidence. Then she typed it and hit enter. The drive opened. The forensic technician made a sound, not quite a word, not quite a breath, something between the two, and Hargrove leaned forward and her face went very still in the way faces go still when the thing they have been looking for is suddenly undeniably right in front of them. How much is there? Ryder asked from behind them. Hargrove straightened up slowly. 14 months of financial documentation, she said. Internal Creed Industrial Communications. Approval chains for every disposal contract signed by Phelps. Wire transfer records between the Delaware consulting firm and Richard Toll's personal account, 12 payments over 3 years, totaling $430,000. She paused. And a recorded phone call. The words landed with the specific gravity of something irreversible. A recorded phone call, Ryder repeated. Dated 9 days before Daniel Mercer died, Hargrove said. She was reading from the file directory on the screen, her voice flat and professional, and carrying something underneath the flatness that was not professional at all. It was the sound of 11 months of dead ends and blocked reports and quiet suppression, arriving finally at their opposite. Participants identified in Mercer's notation as Bartholomew Creed Warren Phelps and Richard Toll. She stopped reading. The notation says recorded without their knowledge, subject terminating the Mercer problem. Nobody spoke. The river moved below the bridge. The sun moved above the horizon. Somewhere behind them, Warren Phelps was sitting on the embankment grass with 2 federal agents beside him, and the distance between where he was sitting and a federal prison cell had just collapsed to essentially nothing. Emily said he knew they were going to kill him. Not a question, a recognition, the final piece of a shape she had been feeling the edges of for 11 months, now fully visible. He recorded the call, she said. He heard them make the decision, and he recorded it, and he put it on the drive, and he sent me the passphrase, and he called me that night to make sure I knew where the files were. Her voice was doing the controlled thing, but it was working harder now than it had at any point in the previous 5 hours. He knew. He knew exactly what was coming, and he spent his last 9 days making sure the evidence would survive him. Hargrove looked at her. Yes, she said simply. That's exactly what he did. He didn't run, Emily said. No. He could have run. He could have taken me and run. We had family in Oregon, an uncle, a cousin. He could have gone there and handed the evidence to someone else and walked away from it. Her voice was still even, but it was the evenness of something under enormous pressure. He didn't. No, Hargrove said again, because he knew if he ran, they would bury it. They would find a way to bury it the way they buried everything else. He knew the only way the evidence survived long enough to matter was if someone stayed close to it who they couldn't buy. Emily looked at the laptop screen at the file directory that represented 14 months of her father's life and 9 days of his death. He stayed, and then he made sure I would stay. Hargrove put her hand on Emily's shoulder. She didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that the contact didn't already say more precisely. Ryder turned away and walked toward the bridge railing and stood with his hands on the cold metal and looked at the river below. He needed 30 seconds of not being in anyone's immediate field of vision because something in his chest had been building since the moment Hargrove read the file directory aloud, and he needed to let it move through him before he could be useful again. Axel appeared beside him. He didn't say anything either. He just stood there, which was the right thing, and after 30 seconds, Ryder straightened up and the thing in his chest had settled to something he could carry. Creed, Ryder said. Hargrove's team is coordinating with FBI right now, Axel said. They had a warrant application staged. Apparently, they've been building toward this for 2 years, waiting for the piece that would make it stick. The recorded call is that piece. He paused. Creed's going to be arrested before noon. And Toll, state police are being brought in simultaneously. Federal jurisdiction supersedes Hargrove, said the corruption charges alone are enough for immediate custody. Axel was quiet for a moment. Phelps is already talking. He started about 10 minutes ago. Hargrove's people say he's giving them everything: internal, structure, shell company, documentation, the names of 3 other regulatory officials in 2 other states who were on the same payroll. Ryder absorbed this. The bridge site, the other dump locations Vance mentioned. EPA is activating emergency environmental response protocols for all 14 miles of riverbed. Hargrove said preliminary containment orders are being drafted as we speak. She used the word unprecedented, and she didn't say it like it was good news. She said it like someone reading a damage assessment. Axel exhaled. 6 years of industrial dumping under that river. 6 years. Daniel Mercer found it 14 months ago, Ryder said. And they killed him for it, Axel said, and it still got out. The river moved below them dark and indifferent and carrying what it had always been carrying, not knowing that this was the last morning it would carry it without people whose job it was to stop it standing on the bank with federal authority and the reason to use it. Behind them, a federal agent was on a phone call that was loud enough to carry terms like immediate custody, warrant execution, and asset freeze surfacing from the flow of legal language like markers in a current. Bartholomew Creed, at whatever hour it was, in whatever comfortable location he occupied this particular morning, was about to have the worst day of his life. The empire he had spent decades building, the chemical contracts, the regulatory relationships, the shell company, architecture, the careful layers of distance between his name and his crimes, was going to come down, not in the way empires usually come down through attrition and slow erosion, but all at once in the specific catastrophic way of structures that have been hollowed out from the inside and are waiting for one clean strike. Daniel Mercer had delivered the strike 9 days before they put him on a county road. He had just needed his daughter to carry it the rest of the way. Ryder walked back toward Emily. She was sitting on the bumper of one of the federal SUVs. Now someone had finally found her shoes, a pair of clean socks, and a set of spare sneakers from an evidence kit bag that were 2 sizes too large but were infinitely better than bare feet on wet ground. And she had them on and tied, and was sitting with her hands flat on her thighs and her face tilted slightly toward the morning sun with her eyes closed. She heard him coming and opened her eyes. "Creed is being arrested this morning," he said. "Toll too. Phelps is cooperating. The river sites are going into federal environmental remediation." She nodded slowly, processing. "And the evidence in federal custody, full chain of custody documented. Hargrove has the drive and the notebooks and all of it. It's not going anywhere except into a federal courtroom." Emily looked at him. "My father's name will be in the case record." "His name will be everywhere," Ryder said. "The evidence bears his name. The documentation bears his name. And when this goes to trial, and it will go to trial, Daniel Mercer is going to be cited in every count of the indictment as the investigator who built the case that brought it down." Something passed through Emily's face that was quiet and enormous and did not need a name. "Hargrove wants to talk to you," Ryder said, "about protective custody and placement. There are procedures for material witnesses who are minors. You'll be safe. Properly safe, not maintenance ledge safe." Emily almost smiled at that. Almost. Maintenance ledge safe was actually pretty effective. "It was," Ryder agreed. "You ran a good operation." She looked at him. "You don't have to say that." "I know I don't. I'm saying it because it's accurate." He held her gaze. 14 men, 6 days of drainage shaft, and a waterproof case, and a 15-year-old girl who didn't break. That's an operation. "Your father trained you well." Emily looked down at her 2 large sneakers. "He trained me for everything except losing him," she said quietly. "That part I had to figure out on my own." Ryder sat down on the bumper beside her. It was a deliberate choice, not standing over her, not maintaining the posture of the person managing the situation, but sitting beside her, the way you sit beside someone when the situation is over, and what's left is just the human part of it. "How are you doing?" he asked, not "how are you holding up?" Not "are you okay?" Both of those were questions that invited the performance of being fine, and she had been performing that all night, and she didn't need to anymore. "How are you doing?" is a real question. She thought about it for a real moment. "I don't know yet," she said. "I've been running on a specific thing for 4 months. Now the thing is done, and I don't know what I run on next." "You don't have to know that yet," Ryder said. "You've been awake all night after 4 months of not sleeping properly. You don't have to know anything in the next 24 hours except where you're going to sleep and what you want to eat." She looked at him sideways. "What did you eat after something like this?" "First time I came out the other side of something this heavy," he considered it genuinely. "Eggs, diner down the road from wherever I was. Scrambled eggs and coffee in a booth by the window where I could see the parking lot." "Why the parking lot?" "Habit," he said. "Old habit, but the eggs were good." She was quiet for a moment. "My father used to make eggs on Sunday. He had a specific technique. He said the secret was low heat and patience, and most people use too much of one and not enough of the other." A pause. He applied that principle to everything, not just eggs. Sounds right, Ryder said. He was usually right, Emily said. And this time the past tense landed differently than it had all night, not with the armored, controlled weight of someone managing grief through discipline, but with something softer and more final. The way the past tense lands when you have stopped bracing against it and started letting it be what it is. He was a good man. He was a genuinely, specifically good man, and the world is smaller without him in it, and no federal indictment changes that. No, Ryder said, it doesn't. But it matters anyway. Yeah, he said, it matters anyway. Hargrove came toward them with a younger agent beside her and a clipboard and the look of someone who had important procedural things to accomplish, but was reading the moment correctly enough to slow her approach and let it finish itself before she arrived. Ryder saw her coming and said to Emily, one more thing. The contaminated land, the bridge site, the river corridor, the full 14-mile stretch. When federal remediation is complete, the EPA has the authority to designate public use zones on recovered land. Hargrove mentioned it. I'm going to ask her about a specific designation. Emily looked at him. What designation? There should be something here with his name on it, Ryder said. Something clean and public and permanent. Not a plaque, not a footnote in a case file. Something people can stand on and breathe clean air above a clean river and know whose work made it possible. Emily was very still. The Daniel Mercer Memorial Site, Ryder said. I'm going to push for it. I can't promise it happens, but I'm going to push. She looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were doing something they had not done all night. The surface of them was changing the absolute flat control of them, giving way to something liquid and immediate and human that had been held back through 5 hours of crisis management and tactical precision and the sheer biological determination of a 15-year-old girl who had decided that falling apart was something she would do later. Later was here. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't make a production of it. 2 tears went down her face in sequence, and she pressed her lips together hard and breathed through her nose and did not look away from Ryder's face. And he did not look away from hers, because looking away would have been a kindness she didn't need and a distance she didn't deserve. He would have liked that, she said. Her voice was steady, but it was the steadiness of something that has made peace with moving, rather than the steadiness of something holding still. He cared about public land. He always said environmental protection wasn't about the science was just a tool. It was about the people who came after having somewhere clean to stand. Then it should be named for him, Ryder said. Hargrove arrived and read both their faces and said very quietly, take the time you need. Emily wiped her face with the back of her hand, one clean motion efficient even now, and looked at Hargrove. I'm ready, she said. What followed was procedural and necessary, and took the better part of 2 hours. Formal witness statements, chain of custody confirmations, the federal minor witness protection intake process that involved more paperwork than Ryder had seen in aggregate in the past decade, and a phone call with a federal juvenile advocate that Emily handled with the same calm precision she had handled everything else, asking specific and intelligent questions about her rights and her timeline, and the expected duration of protective placement, taking notes on the back of a blank evidence form that a young agent had given her without being asked. Ryder watched her from across the site and felt something he did not have an exact name for, not pride, because pride implied a claim on her that he didn't have, but something in that direction. The recognition of quality, the specific satisfaction of seeing someone who deserved to come through something come through it. At 8:47 in the morning, the news alert hit the phones of 3 federal agents simultaneously. Ryder saw them check their screens, and he watched their faces, and he knew before anyone said anything out loud. Ghost came to his shoulder. Creed, Ghost said. Yeah. Arrested at his home 40 minutes ago. FBI and EP. A criminal investigation joint operation. News is already running it. Ghost paused. Richard Toll was taken into custody at his state office at 8:15. 2 other officials named in Phelps's cooperation agreement were picked up simultaneously in different states. Ryder said nothing. He looked at the river. Phelps entered formal cooperation agreement 20 minutes ago. Ghost continued. He's giving them the full financial architecture, every shell company, every payment route, every official who took Creed's money in 3 states over 8 years. A pause. Hargrove's team says the environmental remediation orders are being fast-tracked. Emergency designation. They're talking about the largest freshwater environmental remediation operation in the state's history. Daniel Mercer's case, Ryder said. Daniel Mercer's case, ghost confirmed. Emily was 30 feet away, sitting with Hargrove and the juvenile advocate, and she did not yet know about the arrest. And when she found out in a few minutes when Hargrove checked her own phone and turned to Emily with the specific expression that news of this magnitude produces the knowing of it, was going to land on top of everything else the morning had already put down on her. Ryder decided she should hear it from him. He walked over and Hargrove looked up and Ryder said without preamble, "Creed was arrested 40 minutes ago. Toll is in custody. The remediation orders are active." Emily looked at him. Her face was very still. "It's done," he said. She looked down at her hands at the two large sneakers at the garbage bag coat. Someone had helped her out of an hour ago and replaced with a federal issue emergency jacket that was 3 sizes too large and deeply warm. She looked at her hands for a long moment. Then she said, "My father made his first report to the state environmental office 17 months ago. They buried it in 3 days." She looked up. It took 17 months from that first report to this morning. He spent 14 of those months building the case. He was dead for 11 of them. She paused. "But it got there." "It got there," Ryder said. She stood up from the equipment case she had been sitting on, and she straightened her jacket, and she looked at the bridge, at the structure that had been her shelter and her hiding place and her post for 4 months, at the maintenance shaft she had climbed 1,000 times in the dark at the river below, it that was going to be clean one day because of the man whose flannel shirt was currently in a federal evidence bag. She looked at all of it for a long moment. Then she turned her back to it and looked south toward the road toward whatever came next. Ryder stood beside her. Axel was behind him. Ghost was somewhere to the left. Decker was quiet in the way that Decker was always quiet, which was to say present and steady and requiring nothing. "The eggs," Emily said. Ryder looked at her. "You mentioned a diner," she said. "Scrambled eggs, booth by the window." "Yeah. Is there one near here?" He almost smiled. Then he did smile, not the managed, controlled, almost smile of the previous 5 hours, but an actual one which felt like using a muscle that had been dormant for a while and was glad to be moving again. "There's 112 miles up the state road," he said. "Open at 6. Good coffee." "I want the window booth," Emily said. "Stay on." "Done," Ryder said. They walked to the vehicles. Hargrove walked with them already on her phone, managing the first of what would be a very long day of federal coordination calls, but present enough to reach out and briefly touch Emily's shoulder as they moved, a small, wordless confirmation that she was still there, that the protection was real, that the next phase was beginning, and Emily was not walking into it alone. Emily walked with her shoulders back and her chin up and her father's memory in her chest like a compass. Not the grief of it, or not only the grief of it, but the whole of him, the thinking shirt and the low-heat eggs and the 8-second mirror check and the 14 months of careful, dangerous, deliberate work that had ended in a county road ditch and a federal arrest on the same morning 11 months later, which was not a coincidence and was not an accident and was not random. It was the result of one man doing the right thing with enough discipline and love to make sure it outlasted him. Ryder walked to his Harley. He stood beside it for a moment and looked back at the bridge, at the structure, hanging over the river in the morning light, dripping silent, now its killbox dismantled, and its mercenaries and federal processing, and its command truck sitting dark and empty, with Vance's written confession on the passenger seat. He thought about the phone call he was going to make to a federal land management contact. He knew about designations and commemorative site applications, and the specific process for naming a recovered environmental site after a private citizen. He thought about what the land would look like when the remediation was complete. Clean banks, clear water, somewhere people could stand and breathe and not know what it had cost unless they looked at the sign and read the name and wondered. He thought about Daniel Mercer, who had driven with both hands and checked his mirrors every 8 seconds and built a case that was going to put 4 men in prison and remediate 14 miles of poison river, and did not live to see any of it, but had made sure with extraordinary precision and love that his daughter would. Ryder put his hand on the Harley's grip. Some things could not be fixed. Some losses did not resolve into something clean, no matter what came after. Daniel Mercer was dead, and Emily Carter had spent 4 months alone in a drainage shaft, and those facts were permanent, and the morning's victories did not undo them. But the river was going to be clean. And the man who made that possible was going to have his name on the land where it ran. And his daughter, who had carried his work through the dark and the cold and the fear and the rain, and 17 motorcycles at 60 miles an hour, was going to eat scrambled eggs in a window booth 12 miles up the state road, and she was going to be safe, and she was going to be seen, and no one was ever going to ask her to be invisible again. That was enough. That was in the end exactly enough.